So welcome everyone. I'm Anna Mills. I teach English at College of Marin in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And I'm excited to have discussion with you today and share a bit about my thinking on AI for writing feedback, specifically ways we can support a human-centered writing process and also build AI literacy with students. And I love that folks are sharing. I'll repost the welcome message if you want to share something about your professional life, your name, what you like to drink in the morning. I've got my second cup of strong black tea with milk and sugar here. So welcome folks from all over. And thanks for sharing a little bit. And the slides are available. You can comment on them. And that link is in the chat as well. So my plan is to just really quickly give you my basic case for using AI feedback with students, and then have us do an activity where we explore types of feedback in breakout groups, thinking about what kind of feedback your students might appreciate and you might yourself might use from AI. And then I'll share a few more ideas about how to do it, ways to integrate AI feedback, and an app that I've been involved as a volunteer advisor on. Some preliminary student reactions from a pilot that we did this year. And then if we have time at the end, I have a little experiment with a feedback bot that we can all do. So welcome, Jenny, and thanks everyone for sharing. So just really quickly in the chat, if you want to put a number in on a scale of 1 to 4, and this is about your own writing, because even though we're going to talk about students, you know, so much of the way that I teach writing and support students comes out of my own experiences with my writing process, and I want to have experienced what I'm inviting them to experience. So have you used AI feedback for help with your own writing of any kind? So 1 would be you haven't tried that. 2, you've used it a little. 3, quite a few times. Or 4, consistently in your writing and revision process. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm seeing a bunch of 3s, 2s, a couple 4s. And interesting. Yeah, so we have a lot of folks who are doing it, maybe some who a little bit. Interesting. Yeah, maybe 1 for feedback, but 3 for other tasks. Cool. Thanks for sharing, and feel free to pop, if you haven't already, put a number in the chat. So if you would, then to follow up on that, I am very curious, what kind of feedback do you ask for? What do you ask of the AI system if you've tried it? Or if you haven't yet, what might you ask? What would you like to try? And I have a bunch of ideas up on the screen here, ranging from general, not infrequently, I will just sort of start out with the basic, give me feedback on this. Really without any more specific instructions, even though I know I can. So Veronica says, feedback on how to make my work more precise and less fluffy. I love that. Fluffy, yeah. But some other things we can ask for include encouragement, what's not clear, what needs developing, organization, logical connections, quality of evidence, what's interesting here. I've given it a big brainstorm and said, what's likely to most engage readers in all of this? Feedback on the tone or the level of formality in our writing, possible counter arguments. We can give it directions and say, is this piece of writing following the directions, say for a grant proposal? Grammar and mechanics, everybody's aware of sort of Grammarly and that option, but that's really just one among so many kinds of feedback. Sentence style, or I'm sure there are many others. So if you would, share in the chat anything that you have tried or would like to try. Squashing passive voice. Yeah, avoiding jargon. I love it. Using it when you're stuck on phrasing. I've also done that. What are some related synonyms for a particular word? Great, it helped you write your cover letter for your current position. Yes, so we know it can be helpful. Feedback on tone, especially with email. Yes, definitely, especially when you're frustrated with the addressee. So if there's a specific concern about how something's coming across, yes, AI can be a sounding board. So thanks, folks, for sharing those ideas. Synthesizing notes that from multiple sources, grammar, sentence style, connecting sentences. Great. So there's quite a range here. So I just want to make my quick sort of pitch that frames how I approach inviting students to use AI for feedback. And the core of that is just the idea that I really do believe in a human-centered writing process where writing is about communicating something to another human. And that without that, there's fundamentally not much point. And so in my mind, in writing instruction, the peer feedback and the instructor feedback are still essential because they're part of that way of understanding writing as a real meaningful communication. And still, I think AI can have a role alongside that in supplementing feedback from real human readers. And in part, that's because there are going to be feedback needs that can't be met by peers, teachers, and tutors. And it's debatable how important those needs are, how much of a benefit it is. But off hours, when you can't go to a tutoring center, getting an immediate response, coming back with many rounds of feedback, even with reasonable class size and good funding for tutoring, those things are just not possible. So I would say that as a preface that I don't just assign AI feedback out of the blue. Um, I want to do it in context with some introduction of AI capacities, risks, and ethical concerns. So I do share some readings and assignments that I've used that are fairly short and manageable to introduce students to what large language models specifically are and what kinds of things they're prone to, sometimes making things up, being inaccurate or biased. So you can see those. I'll put this link in the chat as well to a set of assignments that I have on Canvas Commons. And if you don't use Canvas, you can still access that, and you can create a free Canvas account at canvas.instructure.com and then use that site. So, I think the other case for AI feedback is just that students are going to be working with these systems in their personal and professional lives. And so working with AI feedback is one way that we can actually guide them in good habits around that, and they can get to know a little bit of what's possible with current state-of-the-art language models. And they can also practice looking for where they're wrong. And to me, that's a core part of critical AI literacy, both because we need to deflate the hype and also because we need to practice that if we're going to use AI, right? Like as humans, that's what we bring, is the ability to critically evaluate and see where it might be off. So they can practice that with feedback in a way that hopefully boosts their own confidence, supports their own ownership of the writing, their voice. So it potentially leaves students in charge of the writing. And it also gives them control of what kind of feedback they can get. So when you visit a tutor, it's harder to say to the tutor, only talk to me about this. This is what I care about, right? Because the tutor will have training that will lead them to frame things in a certain way. But with AI, the student has a bit more control and a less social inhibition around that. And my impulse toward feedback is also, and this might be controversial. I'm curious how folks feel about this, but there's an impulse to put AI in its place, and to say here is its clear limited role in the writing process. And I think of this as a good way to start with students. And I know we can use AI in so many hybrid ways for brainstorming, for organizing, for revising what we've written. And that certainly will become part of writing processes in the future. But I still have a pretty strong impulse to say, let's start out by setting it to the side, saying that this writing is still about the student's voice, the student's choices, the student's words, and the AI's role is just to give feedback. And to me, that's a role that it's very clear that that's stimulating learning and thinking. It's not replacing them. It's not writing for the student. And so that's kind of a reassuring place to start and develop some habits around, not letting AI take over. And the hope is that this would also, giving it that clear role, would also help discourage other uses that might interfere with writing for thinking, like automating writing or having it do the writing for them. Curious if anyone has a quick reaction or thought about that idea of putting AI in its place. Feel free to share in the chat if you do. And another part of my basic case, the last point I'll say, is that there's definitely a concern about bias in AI, and a concern that that specifically with writing feedback, that it would reinforce the dominance of standard English and the sense that you have to write in this sort of standard, maybe American English, professional, academese style. And that it could reinforce the sense that that's the best way and that's the only way. But I've been experimenting, and I'm curious to experiment more with ways to mitigate that effect. I think there is something of that tendency, but depending on how we ask for feedback, we can really mitigate that. So here's an example of if you ask the AI to describe where the syntax and word choice are powerful or exceptionally clear, and you tell it explicitly, do not assume that good writing needs to conform to formal academic expectations. And so you can tell it that. Susan Scollins is saying, my concern is about the student's voice and hearing their thoughts, not a sanitized AI general sort of voice. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I love how you put the sanitized AI. And that's part of my impulse here also to feedback can mean asking the AI to describe what's in the writing rather than recommending what to do necessarily. And so sometimes it's really helpful as a writer to have a mirror held up to what we've done. And that's something that requires a fair amount of labor for a peer reviewer or a tutor to do, just to sit there and describe like a literary critic, right? But AI can do that very quickly, and that can be very validating. And it can help the writer figure out if they've achieved their purpose. So where was my syntax memorable and clear, right? So yeah, that's so interesting. Donnie is saying this is a reason you don't use it, because it responds with something that obscures your voice and is dull. And I'm curious whether, I think sometimes we include sort of request for revision as feedback, and it could be, right? But I'm kind of trying to distinguish between that and this type of feedback, which is you don't let it rewrite. It doesn't get to say how to say how it doesn't get to recommend what the text should look like. Yes, and I have control issues too. Thank you for saying that. I want to keep in control of my words, and I want to know, I don't want anything changing them unless I, really have decided that suggestion is a good one for me. Um, so, but you can see how in this feedback prompt, we could ask the AI to not just fix the grammar, right? Or not just tell me where the errors are, but list sentences that differ from conventions of standard English, right? And then discuss how it differs, why it might be considered an error, and what the effects on the readers might be, right? So that's more positive. That acknowledges that a writer might choose to write in non-standard English, and that there might be benefits to that. So I've done some experiments with that. You can peek at if you're interested on the American writer Gloria Anzaldua's sort of a famous essay, Speaking in Tongues, about it's called A Letter to Third World Women Writers, and it's a very powerful piece with definitely places where she's not writing in standard English, but it's powerful. And I did find that that the AI feedback was able to quote from some of those powerful sentences and explain how they might, how even though they're not correct according to standard academic English, they're still going to affect the reader very powerfully, and that's the writer's choice. Well, thanks, Susan. So I wanted to give you a chance to experiment a little bit. I'm going to talk later a little bit more about MyEssayFeedback, this app that I have advised on as a volunteer advisor that comes out of the Open Educational Resources kind of community. But and one of the things that app does coming out that is OER is to share a library of feedback prompts. And Alex is asking, would I provide students with the prompt or a library? And yeah, so I would provide students with a set of options of different prompts that that are already written that I've chosen. And I would invite them also to suggest other types of prompts that I could put into the system. That's how I do it. So you can see those types of prompts here. I just put in the chat this feedback library, and it's huge, and it's very mixed. These are prompts that teachers who've used this app have said they're happy to share publicly. So if you're using the app, you can then filter, you can look at any prompts about thesis statements, or any prompts about grammar, or any prompts about annotated bibliographies. You can filter by a topic or a type of feedback, and then if you're using it, you can copy and edit any of these. So that's the kind of open licensed benefit here, that we can share prompts as educators. So what I'd like to do, is just to have some feedback breakout groups where we discuss this, and maybe, see, I don't have breakout group access, but if one of the hosts could create breakout groups, I'm thinking we would do groups of 4 or 5, because if folks don't want to join a group, you can stay in the middle, but in the main session. But if you're willing just to be in a group where you browse this library together to see what kinds of feedback you're seeing there, and then share just your name and one thing that interested you, or a type of feedback you would like to add or experiment with. So yeah.
Okay, I'll create them now.
Yeah, that would be great. And I will put these directions again into try to broadcast this to the breakout groups, so you'll have the directions in the groups. So is that clear? So you're just browsing the types of feedback here, and then introducing yourself and saying one thing that interested you or a type of feedback you would try.
Okay, for 10 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh, let's see. Are we able to do the group? Oh yeah, I see breakout rooms now. So you should be assigned, and you can join your group if anyone's having not sure where that is in the system. Let us know. We can try to help. It looks like rooms are filling up. Thank you for joining. Great. We have at least 2 people in each room. Is anyone staying behind with a question or a comment? Feel free to unmute and tell me.
Sorry.
Hi.
What? Well, hi. What's happening? Just a minute. Like, I
Um,
was. I'm in a different room. I see. Okay, gotcha.
this is the main room right now.
Oh, did I go back? What? Okay, sorry. I don't know
You
what's happening.
you may be able to go.
I'm gonna
Is there a
join.
breakout room that you're
Yeah,
assigned to that you can
I
see?
was there and then I bounced and I'm going back. Thank you.
Okay, okay, sure. Anyone else with a question or comment? Yeah. Hi.
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 Do you think I should join, or do I stay here in case like I manage so I can manage the breakout? Because it's the
Oh,
first time I actually do it.
oh, it looks like I can manage it. I'm seeing everything, so I can close the rooms. And let's see. So we just started, so I guess I'll close them in 9 minutes.
Mhm, mhm.
So you can go. Yeah, feel free to go to a room.
Okay.
Definitely.
And the messages on the chat, are everyone in the
Oh,
group
I
are
should
receiving?
broadcast the message to everybody.
Yeah. I'm learning as well how to manage the breakout room.
Okay, I broadcast the message. And you're welcome to go to one of the groups, and I can close the rooms at in 9 minutes.
All right.
How about if I pause the recording?
Sure. Great. So welcome back. Thank you for sharing in the groups. If you want to share any highlight of group discussion in the chat, that would be awesome. And I'm hoping we'll have more time at the end as well for if anyone has something burning that came out of the discussion that you think is useful for the whole group. Feel free also to unmute and share that now. So up to you if you want to share something that came out. I know the group I joined was very interesting. So I did want to just give you a little bit more information about some options for how we would do this, how we would invite students to use it. Thanks, Veronica. Yeah, I'm excited that it's a diverse set of prompts. Gives you a sense of the full range of possibilities, and it's only growing, right? So I think the next question after what kinds of prompts you can use is really how good is the feedback? And maybe that might come first. But I think, I did mention that it's important that students practice seeing where it's wrong. And I do find that it can be wrong. At least it can deviate from what I would recommend as a teacher, or it can misunderstand either the feedback prompt or what the student is trying to do. So that's, fundamental to the situation. But at the same time, I find that it can be quite excellent And one thing that impresses me is that it's been pretty good at quoting directly from the student writing to support the feedback. So, that's a labor-intensive thing that is quite helpful to the writer, but that most readers won't necessarily do, even teachers, right? So in this example, I've asked it for feedback on clarity on a student essay that was shared with permission. And you can see that it says in this essay, there are a few points that might need clarification. And it's the part in italics is the student writing. And the AI explains why a statement might be confusing, what the reader might think, and says it would be helpful to clarify how something, why something would be, why somebody would think something. And so these are very specific, grounded in the student's writing. So it's relatively easy for the student to assess what they would do and whether that makes sense to them, targeted to that sentence in their writing. Now, how could it be integrated? So I mentioned that I want it to be a supplement to a human-centered writing process. And I've kind of really tried to be thoughtful and careful about how I frame it, so that we keep the emphasis on the human audience. So I have started out by assigning it as an optional extra credit assignment. And I required students to go to a human peer tutor as an assignment. And then I had an extra credit assignment where they could also ask for AI feedback. And that's what I did on the first, I think, 2 essays. And then I started to require it, but I still offered an alternative. So I do think it's important to give an alternative. I had one student who was afraid that an AI app before had messed up her computer and she didn't want to use another one. And it seems it's new enough and it could make someone uncomfortable. So that I think it's important to offer an alternative. So I just said, you can do an extra tutor visit instead of the AI feedback. Or you can write a short reflection on why you don't want to use it. And most students didn't take me up on that, but I think it was good to offer that. The other thing to know is that obviously you can do this with a free chatbot like ChatGPT 4.0 or Claude or Gemini, Copilot. You can do that, but in that case, you don't have visibility into what the student is doing. You don't have necessarily the data protection that you want, or the FERPA, or the compliance with privacy policies. And so there are these apps that are proliferating that facilitate sort of a classroom management of AI feedback and assigning that and reviewing it. And so these are interesting ones. Feedback Fruits, Packback, Power Notes has a really neat, interesting way. However, I will say they're not cheap. And I haven't yet seen that they let teachers write the feedback prompts. Of course, I'm behind this app that I've been advising on, right? So that's part of why I see it as having benefits. Any of those apps, though, will protect the privacy of the student data, and they will allow the instructor to provide sort of guidance and supervision, and to weigh in and say, actually, maybe I don't agree with what the AI has said here. That's not the purpose of the assignment, or it doesn't seem like that's where the student was going, or it doesn't, align with my writing teaching approach. But it is nice to have a dedicated app, because then you're assigning this and it's much easier to manage and give students credit for doing it. And you can even do that automatically within a learning management system. So if they do the assignment, if they reflect on AI feedback, they get credit. So I think I mentioned MyEssayFeedback.ai. This is the project of math and music professor Eric Keene, who is also the developer for an open educational resources homework platform that is associated with the OER publisher LibreTexts.org. So that's how I got connected with him, because my OER textbook is on LibreTexts, and we started to collaborate because I'm a writing teacher and he's a math teacher. And so he was, he's wonderful at creating kind of a simple user interface, doing ed tech development. And he was open to kind of my ideas and inviting other writing teachers in to advise on the pedagogical approach. So it's, this app is designed not to rewrite the student text. It prompts students to take a step back and question the AI feedback and consider their own purposes. And it links to a resource from my textbook, which is just a set of template phrases for reflecting on AI feedback, just to encourage students to feel comfortable disagreeing with it, right? So if it sounds very academic and authoritative, they might be intimidated. But I think it's important to give them these model ways to reflect that that encourage them to speak back to it. So I put that link in the chat. So what that looks like is I create an assignment, and I can either specify the kind of feedback, the prompt from that library that you saw, or what I tend to do is to choose a number of different kinds of feedback and let the student select the one that seems most useful to their writing process at that moment. So you'll see that here I've got a comprehensive feedback option that is based on my research paper assignment. But I also have more specific targeted ones on encouragement, clarity, organization, paragraph focus. I've taught them about specific skills like signal phrases and transitions. So I have specific feedback options for those as well. Feel free to stop me with questions or put something in the chat. And then, the app, once they've seen the feedback and they can continue the chat session, they can ask follow-up questions about it. And then they're prompted to reflect on it. And they're prompted with these questions like, is there anything you're not sure about or that doesn't seem right? Is there something that resonates with you or gives you an aha moment? What are you left wondering or debating with yourself? And there's a link to sort of more such questions. And they just have to write 100 words for homework credit. So that's just the barest kind of look at how this has worked. And then I just want to bring student voices in. So I have used it throughout the past 2 semesters, but I only taught 1 class a semester. So I did get some feedback, but Kathleen Peters of John Brown University has gathered the most responses. I think she was teaching 4 courses a semester and using it really extensively for every essay. And she calls it MEF, MEF for my essay feedback. And so I, with her permission, I have some of those student responses to share. And I think, some of them are very encouraging in that they kind of reflect some of these goals and philosophies that I've just articulated. So students were saying it didn't rewrite for me. It taught me to use AI in a way that doesn't allow me to cheat, yet it truly improved my writing. I like this one that says it made us think and analyze our work with maximum effort. So, this was not a time saver for them, but they did find it useful. One student said it was a tool to further my own thinking. I wasn't given the answer. I appreciate this, but I learned to spot inconsistencies in my own writing. And there were some comments as well that support this idea that it was building critical AI literacy, and specifically students who were using it to ask follow-up questions sometimes felt that they were learning to ask better questions of an AI system. And one said asking the right questions was tricky at the start, but they did find that they got better at it and that the system was more helpful once they were able to articulate more of what they were looking for. And it was interesting that a couple of comments suggested, and I've seen this from my own students too, that they felt glad to be able to get feedback before showing the writing to a human. So there was a sense that it was less stressful in a way, because it wasn't a human reader. And also that they were glad not to be coordinating a time with another person, right? And I still want them to have those tutoring sessions and to build those skills of planning their time, et cetera, to have a session with a human, but the supplement certainly brings a lot that's valuable also. The late at night instant feedback. I know I use that as a writer. And this last quote I thought was pretty powerful. A student said, "Using AI has helped me learn how to properly use it and not allow myself to let AI use me." So I think, that it just speaks to this sense of maybe fear and uncertainty that many of us feel around AI, and a sense that it's powerful, and that that there might be a power struggle between us and it, and that we're ceding control, right? And so I think of this particular approach as a way to set up some guardrails so that we as writers have more control, and we're making decisions about the role of AI, and claiming our own words. And there's a link in there to more comments from my students from last semester, and it was interesting that their comments were generally sort of very general and positive, like, this was helpful, the peer tutors were also helpful, I want access to this resource in the future, I want this kind of feedback in the future. And so that was helpful to me in seeing that they wanted both. And I should have included a reference, but it hasn't been published yet, but I've been in discussion with 3 University of California Davis researchers who are in the midst of a study on peer review and AI feedback. Carl Whithouse, Lisa Sperber, and Marit MacArthur, and their findings were that students really wanted both. They did not want a scenario where I just want the peer review or I just want the AI feedback. They did prefer to have them in complement to each other. So let me pause there and see what questions, comments. I can show you a bit of my essay feedback. If you do choose, you can register for it and just try it out without, as an educator, without paying initially. And I have a link to that at the very last slide. And you'll find that there's a playground where you can test out sample essays and see what kind of feedback it gives. Yeah, thanks, Alex. How much time in class am I devoting to discussions of ethical uses of AI? I do explain to students that that I've been involved in advising on this app, and we do talk about briefly about data privacy, about what reasons why they might not want to feed their essay to a public facing tool like ChatGPT. But my class has a theme of AI, so we are doing a number of readings on it. And yes, I love Mark's recommendation of Kate Crawford's book, Atlas of AI. I do think that even in a class without that much focus on it, we can do it in small chunks. And that's what I've tried to share in that collection of assignments and readings. Some of them are very short videos, so that you know, in a course on any other subject, one could introduce AI feedback with a little bit of framing to encourage this kind of skeptical student response to what's coming out of the AI. Yeah, was there another question? Okay.
Yes, Dr. Meg Hunter was asking, what's the cost?
Did I miss? Oh, the cost. Yeah. So it is possible to pilot it, I think, with 3 teachers per institution for free still in the fall. And the cost is going to look something like $10 to $15 per student per semester, as I understand it from Eric. He is trying to keep it very low and not bring in sort of venture capital or, you know, lots of employees. But there is a cost to getting that AI access from OpenAI and sort of maintaining the system and doing accessibility checks and privacy checks. And so that's where he is right now, is in the $10 to $15 range, depending on how OpenAI manages the pricing. But he's very approachable. So if you try it and you're interested and you have an idea for how you would want to use it and you want to check in with him, you just email him, support@MyEssayFeedback.ai. So, okay, Veronica, awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that point about having students who are working professionals who might not be able to get to campus. I taught online last semester, and you know, there were some online tutoring options where they could get feedback by email from humans, but they also really appreciated if they had very complicated work and family schedules, that this was more flexible and accessible. Yeah, I think that what we'd like to see is institutions paying for this like other edtech software, like the learning management system, so that it's not another burden on students. You know, my courses are 0 textbook cost. So why is it better than just using the ChatGPT for free? I mean, you can do that. What I really appreciate is that this allows for the instructor to see their discussions, their reflections, to give them credit automatically for it. It gets very complicated logistically to ask them to share chat transcripts and then to log those and review them and comment on them, and to set up sort of ornate kind of instructions for students. And I think this really streamlines that process, and it gives them a framework. And it also is not just a free chatbot. It has restrictions. So it's not as distracting that, like, okay, you're talking to ChatGPT and you can ask it about how to get stains out of your laundry at the same time as you're asking for feedback, right? It's very targeted. And so I think that's a benefit. And I definitely understand that concern. I do use, this is the main AI system that I use. I do things like sharing chat. I do other things that you'll see in those Canvas resources, but this is the main one. But since you asked, the last thing I had here, well, we have a couple of minutes that you might want to try. This doesn't require login, so I thought I would share this with you because we probably can't all sign up for my essay feedback on the spot and try it in the time period we have. But this is a single kind of feedback that I made into a chatbot on a platform for educators called playlab.ai that I just trained on. And I do really recommend Playlab if you want to build a focus bot and really experiment with prompting and get some support around that. So if you visit this link, the sole goal of this bot is to give you feedback on a possible research paper topic. So we could use this as if we're writing academic papers, or our students can use it. So if you tell it, my topic is jellyfish. It's supposed to give you feedback that would help you narrow that and clarify that research topic so that you're really ready to start the research process. So if you want to sort of try that and see what you think of the feedback it gives, I wanted to offer that as a chance to experiment. And I can also demonstrate that, but I'm also happy to take final questions. Any other questions or comments? And thank you, Maha, for putting the link to the feedback form. It'd be great if folks could give feedback on the session. In the last minute, does anyone want to suggest a topic, serious or silly, and we'll see what feedback it gives us? Thank you, Eric. Thank you to everyone for the great comments and questions and sharing of ideas on feedback, AI feedback. Fighting styles of North American capybaras. Great. All right. Let's just see what it does if I put that right in. A fascinating and unique topic. I find its sort of validating statements to be nice to read. But of course, it finds everything fascinating. It seems quite specific, possible expansions. So that's interesting. So this bot is trained with some materials from my textbook on developing focused research topics. So it's trying to kind of gauge whether it's too narrow or too broad. And it's asking it's kind of poking at the writer to explain more why they find it interesting or important, what draws them to it. And it's got some specific questions here about capybaras and how they interact with predators. Are there differences between wild and captive ones? Might be interesting to explore. And then it has some suggestions for process and for what readers might be curious about. Connecting the topic to broader discussions on animal behavior or conservation. And then it links to my textbook and the resources on the research process. So thanks for that fun suggestion of a topic. Okay, debatable success on historiography. So yeah, so you will get different suggestions each time, as you would in ChatGPT. If you enter a prompt, you'll get a different response each time, because it is generating it with some element of randomness on the fly. Because of the way these systems work, they're not necessarily choosing the absolute most likely response. Stochastic parrots, right? Mark says, so that's a reference to a famous paper that talks about the element of randomness that's built into these systems. That's funny. Yeah, it does suggest Wikipedia to get an overview, which I personally would think is fine. I would agree with that, but I know that's of course been a matter of debate among teachers over years. Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. This was really fun. And I don't have to run, so if you have further questions, I'm happy to stay on for another few minutes, or comments, suggestions, pushback, always welcome. See, I do have a last slide here. So feel free to register for my essay feedback, or to share these slides, or you can reach out to me at armills@marin.edu. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mark, Wells, Shahinaz, Donnie, Alex. Susan. Yeah, such a quick hour. I know. That's the thing. Veronica, thank you. Thank you, Jenny. All right. I think we can stop recording. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much.